It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing double Dr. Becky by DDS and JD. She is both a licensed attorney and a licensed dentist and practices in the area of medical malpractice law, including dental malpractice law, as well as other areas of personal injury law. My God, I feel sorry for your husband and your kid. When mom's a lawyer, a doctor, a dentist, your husband and kid don't have a chance. Becky practiced law for a large law firm and in the government before choosing to use her previous background in science and her passion for healthcare to attend dental school. While Becky was in dental school, she maintained an interest in law and continued to use her legal background for the benefit of patients. During her time in dental school, she was elected president of the Colorado chapter of the American Student Dental Association and was also elected to serve on the board for her student chapter of Alpha Omega. After graduating dental school and practicing general dentistry in the Denver metropolitan area, Dr. Bai merged her passion for law and the health sciences as a practicing attorney at Tomazin, Hilliard, and Clore. Dr. Bai has remained active in the legal community throughout her legal career. She has served on the University of Denver Sturm College of Law, Alumni Council, the Denver Bar Association Docket Committee, and previously chaired the Colorado Bar Association Young Lawyers Division. She's a member and president of the Judge William E. Doyle Inn of Court. In 2011, was elected as one of 2 lawyers in the country to work with barristers in the United Kingdom for the Inn of Court's prestigious Pegasus Scholarship Program. Becky Bai received her Bachelor of Arts degree with high distinction in liberal arts core curriculum from Colgate University with a double major in chemistry and religion. That means you are very cerebral. She received her law degree from the University of Denver Sturm and her doctor of dental surgery from the University of Colorado School of Dental Medicine, where my teacher, Nancy Kassenbaum, is now the dean, and she was my radiology instructor when I was in dental school in the 80s. Dr. Bai met her husband through their mutual involvement in the legal community. She is a proud mom of a young son and 2 cats. In her free time, she enjoys traveling the world, watching British costume dramas, and anything that involves her undergraduate alma mater, Colgate University. Please just note I'm not giving legal advice, and this does not establish any sort of attorney-client relationship with your listeners or people who contact me. I'm just talking about the law in general, and if they have any specific questions related to their own practice, she advised them to seek counsel. Becky, thank you so much for coming on this show. There's a million attorneys, but there's not few that have a double doctorate in dentistry and law, and I don't know what to think of dental malpractice because I have auto insurance. I mean, I don't want to get in a car wreck because I don't want to die. I don't care who has to pay for it. I have State Farm. Same thing with my 4 boys. Each one of them only stacked their car twice each. And, but you know, they weren't hurt. No one else was hurt. That's all that matters. I kind of look at dental malpractice as every dentist is going to get sued. And if anybody should worry about it, it should be my dental malpractice deal, because I'm convinced that people are batshit crazy, and eventually a crazy person, you're going to meet a crazy person, and it's just going to happen. Is that a bad attitude, or should I be more fearful of getting sued?
I would say if you do if you practice dentistry the way you should, accidents do happen. People have bad days. Dentists have bad days. I think many people call law firms like our law firm and other law firms, and most of the cases, the potential cases that people call us about, we don't take, because it's often the person's irritated with the dentist did something or said something that they didn't like, and they want to sue them, and maybe they have some financial problems, and so they think, oh, this is my easy way out. And most cases don't have merit. But I do think that many of the cases that lawyers take on do have merit if it reaches that point. The reason why you shouldn't just say, oh, my insurance carrier is going to worry about it, is multiple reasons. Even if you settle a case, at least in the state of Colorado, and I think this is the case for other states, you have to report it to your dental board when you renew your license that you settled a case. And then it's going to be on your dental license for the rest of your life that you settled a case.
But wait, is that settle in private or public? I mean, can't we? I mean, I just assume that lawyers, the business people, when they settle something, it could be private, or does it have to be public, or?
No, so if there's a settlement, even if the settlement terms are private, so most settlements are private. They say you cannot tell anybody what happened, how much we settled for, the terms of the settlement. But the fact that you settled a case, you still have to report it to our dental board. If you settle a case that exceeds the amount that the patient paid you, you have to report it, even though you don't have to report the dollar amount. It's either $1 more or $1 million more. That's not what the dental board wants to know. It's the fact that you actually settled a case. So in Colorado, like other states, doctors do have an incentive to not settle cases because they have to report that on their license. And they say, you know what? I'm paying my insurance company for representation anyway. And if I have to report it on my license, you might as well take it to court, where I might have slightly better odds than just settling a case. And many times they'll take it to court and the jury will find in favor of the doctor. So they get to walk away, and the insurance company pays the bill for the attorney's fees, and they never have to report anything on their license.
So game theory, Milton Friedman always talked about how government has the best intention. They pass a law and then it blows up in their face. You never know. Game theory. Do you think, looking back now, that was smart of Colorado to say, if you settle a case for $1 more than the patient paid you, you have to tell the board? Was that a good idea or a bad idea looking back?
I think I understand what the idea is meant to do. I think it alerts future patients who maybe do extensive due diligence about their healthcare providers and look at their license that, yes, maybe there were some unhappy patients or unfortunate outcomes in the past. And it disincentivizes the doctor to settle. I'm glad you brought that up, because there is a law that just got passed in Colorado that is based on an Iowa law. And it started going into effect of July 1st of last year. So it's very, very new. It's called the Candor Act. And it basically incentivizes healthcare providers to settle or to provide compensation to a patient for an adverse health outcome. So essentially, a bad incident or negligence. And if they follow a certain process, they don't have to report it on their license. So I think this might be a game changer. It's so new that I haven't seen really the effects of it yet, but we're starting to take cases and trying to work it under that law. So that way the doctor and their insurance can settle the case and not have to report it on their license.
And so basically, it seems like you either believe in transparency or you don't. So it sounds like the first round of this law is, hey, we just want transparency. We just want you to report it. And now you're saying that the Colorado Candor Act establishes a voluntary framework for healthcare providers and facilities to offer compassionate, honest, timely, and thorough responses to patients who experience an adverse care incident. So how is this going to be different?
So if they choose to provide some type of compensation to patients under this law, and there's certain procedures that you have to follow as the doctor in order for this law to apply, they can quickly resolve it without having to report it on their license.
And you're sure you'd rather do this than do a root canal? I could not be a dentist lawyer, because if you told me I could never pull 4 wisdom teeth again, I know I would absolutely cry. So a fourth of my viewers are still in dental school, and the rest are under 30. And when they look at you, when they think of getting sued by a lawyer, that they just immediately just want to cry. I mean, it's just like meeting you would be their worst nightmare. Why is this so scary? And why do old guys like me, I mean, I got 5 grandchildren. I mean, I just look at, It's the cost of doing business. You know, I try to treat other people like I want to be treated. I think one of the reasons I never got in legal trouble is because if grandma wanted her money back, I give it back, because I don't want grandma living 3 blocks away for 40 years telling everybody that my denture is horrible. And every time I've refunded the money, usually the spouse comes in and wants to shake my hand and say, thanks for taking care of this or whatever there. So why do these kids get in trouble? How can they not get in trouble? You know?
I'm glad you brought it up. I would say bedside manner is a huge component of it. If people like you, even if they know you did something that was a bad outcome, maybe it was your fault, maybe it was just a bad complication, if they like you, they are very, very reluctant to pursue it any further because they don't want to hurt your feelings, essentially. And it's usually people with bad bedside manner, or someone who, if you just say, I'm sorry, let me try to fix this, let me help you out, that alone will deter someone from pursuing a lawsuit. So I would say that's the main thing, is just making a mistake and being unlikable at the same time is the recipe for someone to call me up and say, I want to sue my dentist. Something I find there are some common...
I'm going to stop there. Does the dentist usually know he has bedside manner, or is he aloof at how he makes people feel?
I think, yeah, you're right. I think the people that have poor bedside manner have no idea that they have poor bedside manner, or maybe they don't know how to fix it. So it does, the great thing for your dental student viewers or listeners, this is the time to work on your bedside manner while you're in dental school. Really try to make it a very positive patient experience. Call them after the procedure, even if it's a prophy, just to see how they're doing, and start working on the way you interact with patients right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I read one study. I don't know how long ago it was, but this one medical malpractice did a survey on their own claims, and they found out it was the same people getting sued over and over and over. And it was like, 2% of their people were 6% of their claims or something. And that's what they narrowed it down to, that you're just not a nice person and people don't like you. And right. So they spank you with an attorney.
No, there are thousands of attorneys of dentists in Colorado, and we get calls. There are certain people that pop into my mind that we get constant phone calls about.
Well, you're an attorney. You can say their name. Come on. This is Dentistry Uncensored. Who's the most famous person in Colorado that's always getting people to call you the most?
I really can't say.
I'm just kidding. I knew a double doctor wouldn't take the bait. So you're saying the first thing is I said refund the money,
right?
And your response was just be nice, be likable, have a nice. I see it all the time. It's like a broken endo file. Well, that lady knows that cars eventually break down until they throw them into a junk pile, but they didn't tell them that the file broke. But when you get a flat tire, the mechanic tells you, hey, your alternator went out. He doesn't say, I'm not going to show you under the hood. Right. Yeah. So they won't admit the file break. They won't say they're sorry. They won't show the human side. And when you break that file, I mean, it happened a lot more in the 80s. I remember one time I broke a file and I thought I was going to throw up. Yeah. And I was so sad. And the guy's like patting me on the back, telling me, come on, let's finish this tooth, So it's like, not only did I break a file, but not only did I not lawsuit, he was the one patting me on the back, telling me to go with it.
Right. Well, no, the file example is perfect because we get phone calls every once in a while about broken files. But all the phone calls I've taken, they've called in and said, my dentist or endodontist was doing root canal and they told me that the file broke and they took x-rays and they referred me to somebody else and this and this and this. Do I have a case? And I often tell them they did the right thing. We're not going to take this case. I don't think this is negligence. This is something that happens, unfortunately, occasionally because these files are very delicate and they're prone to breaking. It would be a whole different thing if they saw on the radiograph that there was a broken file and they covered it up and pretended nothing happened and didn't tell the patient about it, and they find out a year later. That would be a whole different ballgame.
Yeah. And, this is a horrible example, but I should say it just because I think it epitomizes human behavior. It was like when Clinton had his deal when he got impeached.
Right.
If he just would have said, hey, why don't you go be married to Hillary for 30 years? I'm sorry, If he just would have admitted and walked away, everybody just would have gave him a pass.
I agree.
But he lied.
Exactly.
And it's like in a Judeo-Christian country, they hate the sin, they love the sinner. All he had to do is say, "Man, I fell down. I'm sorry. It's hard being married to Hillary," and it'd been over. But he lied, played you as a nut. Like, okay, I'm not going to tell you I broke a file. I'm a doctor, you're not. And then you find out at the next dentist 5 years later, there's a broken file in your tooth, and now you're mad and you want to go get a lawyer and sue me.
Right. I always tell people before they're under oath, taking deposition or in trial, the worst piece of truth is better than any lie. Tell the truth, even if it makes you look bad, because it is better than any type of cover up or lie you can ever do. And that's the truth with dentistry.
Especially since the media has a long-term memory about 6 seconds. I mean, it's tied between a gerbil, a goldfish, and the news cycle. I mean, so just get it all out there. I love that you said. Would you say the little bit of truth is better than a lie?
The worst, the worst possible truth is better than even the smallest lie.
Yeah. It's better than a lie. So are there any procedures like young kids are coming out of dental school and they don't know if they should do the soft and pretty fluffy route of bleaching, bonding, veneers, and Invisalign, or do they want to get where the real money is and the real need is, get bloody extractions, wisdom teeth, implants? Is there more legal problems going soft and fluffy as opposed to getting bloody?
Yeah, there's definitely less legal problems with the soft and fluffy stuff, and a lot of it has to do
is
with
it because they're not sued because they're really not real doctors?
No, it's lawsuits are very expensive. It is thousands of dollars in court fees. To get expert witnesses, they charge thousands of dollars. So most lawyers will not even take a case unless after the amount of money you have to pay or the client has to pay to even litigate, if it's worthwhile at the end. And the way the amount of money that you think of when you're trying to calculate, how much money is this lawsuit going to result in for the client is what are called damages. And it's a combination of non-economic damages like pain and suffering, and economic damages, basically out-of-pocket money you've expended in the past or will have to expend in the future to make you whole. So for the things that are kind of light and fluffy, like getting a bad filling, getting a bad crown, maybe drilling on the wrong tooth, the damages are so small, especially even if you have to redo the whole thing, and the pain and suffering on the grand scheme of things is pretty insignificant. The economics just don't justify pursuing that kind of case. So it's usually the kind of the bloody stuff because it involves nerves and permanent nerve injuries and lifetime of maybe physical therapy or going to a neurologist, taking something like Lyrica or gabapentin. So those are the kind of cases that you'll see in the dental malpractice realm. And I will say, and I'm glad you brought that up, talking about trying to figure out what you're going to do practicing, especially as a general dentist. One of the themes that I see is the overarching themes of cases that I see out there are usually general practitioners that are doing things like wisdom teeth extractions when they should have referred that out. And I'm not saying every general practitioner should refer every wisdom tooth case out, but there are cases where the piano showed that there might be IA involvement, and the general practitioner failed to order a CBCT or maybe failed to appreciate the significance of that on the piano and went ahead and did the surgery and completely severed the IA nerve. It's a very similar set of facts that multiple cases have.
Severed the inferior alveolar nerve.
Or the lingual nerve, yes.
Yeah, by pulling wisdom teeth. And and so you're saying they have to have if they don't have a CBCT, you're saying, is that the standard of care?
I'm not saying the standard of care is a CBCT, but I would argue, and the standard of care is something that's established by an expert witness in a case. If there looks like there's an IA that is going through the tooth, or the IA nerve looks like it's deflected under the root, or there's something that looks a little off about it, then I would argue that they should order CBCT as the next step.
Wow. So what would be the most weighted? Wisdom teeth, lingual nerve, was that number one? Yeah,
that would be, say, number one in terms of our variety of cases now.
And how much is that case usually worth? I mean, how much do they will it usually go for when it's all settled and done?
It's hard to say because it's a variety of factors. How old is the client? If the client is 85 years old and the life expectancy is maybe 88 years old, it's not worth as much as a 25-year-old who has to deal with dysesthesia and paresthesia on one side of their tongue for the rest of their life. So, in the hundreds of thousands, I would say, but it just depends on so many factors, whether it inhibits them from doing their job. Maybe they have, let's say if they're a TV broadcaster and they're making $300,000 a year, and now they can't be on air as often or at all because they're slurring their speech. So that calculates into the damages versus someone that maybe had a desk job and it doesn't affect their future economic wages. So all those factor into the total amount of damages.
The thing that I just really don't recommend at all, and I see it all the time, is IV sedation. I mean, if you go into any hospital, and were you born in Colorado?
I was born in New York.
Okay, you're born in New York.
Yeah.
Since you were born, in every hospital in America, you can't do the bypass and the IV. They broke those apart. They said, we want anesthesiologists just doing the anesthesia while you're doing the gallbladder. And It's a total separation. And the only place you see that happen, ask Joan Rivers how it went. She went to the private upscale great physician and she's dead. And she, and when I was lecturing in London, the UK had come to the same conclusion. They were looking at all the data and they're saying, you know what? We don't like, why is this so much higher? And they go, because it's doctors who aren't anesthesiologists. And they're like, I thought we got rid of that. And they go, yeah, it's the dentist. It's only done in dentistry unless you're Joan Rivers and can get it private. But what would you say to a young kid who says, well, I want to go sign up for docs and I'm going to be a weekend anesthesiologist?
Yeah. No, that scares me too. And I would say to anyone, anytime you choose to do something, especially if it's a little risky, make sure you are, you know what you're doing and you're competent. And speaking of anesthesia, I don't personally have any cases about IV sedation or anesthesia. I do know there's a big case right now in Arizona against Cool Smiles, I believe, one of the, for wrongful death of a child, and it's related to the anesthesia. One of the firms that's based in Denver with an Arizona office is handling that, so I am aware of it.
And that's a nightmare.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a nightmare. I mean, crazy. I mean, so I don't do that. I tell people that if you, because I know when you have babies, I mean, I have 4 babies, and you go in there in the middle of the night, and you say, yeah, I want an IV sedation, and they push their little Motorola beeper, and that guy would show up in like 2 minutes. I'm like, where were you? And he goes, oh, I just sit at the IHOP and eating a waffle, and here I am. So it's like, if you can have an anesthesiologist delivered faster than Domino's Pizza, why would you want to go learn that yourself?
Right. Well, again, I think another theme that comes up with unfortunate outcomes in dentistry is putting profits over patients. And when you put profits over patients in any setting, and this type of scenario could be part of that, is I think that's when you start getting people with injuries or even death. And so you have to take a step back and think what's in the best benefit of the patient. Ordering this anesthesiologist or that can just show up, or maybe going to a surgical center and doing something under more controlled conditions.
Yeah, and again, I don't know if it's because I'm old, but I still like profit first. I'd rather be a conductor. I mean, I'd rather have the anesthesiologist come and put him to sleep. And sometimes when they'll put him to sleep, you'll have to do 4 molar endos on a guy. Well, I don't want to do 4 back-to-back molar endos. So you have an endodontist come in and have him do those 4 molars for 50-50. And then when he's done, the periodontist can come in and drop the implants. And all you did is spend 3 hours surfing Dental Town while it was all done. You know what I mean? So do you only do, in dental malpractice, is it mostly dentist patient cases, or what if it's a dentist who his associate violated his non-compete clause? Do you do that type of law too?
I don't know. There was a time, so when I was practicing dentistry, so many of my classmates and other dentists I knew asked them to review their contracts, including non-compete clauses, and asked for legal advice. So I decided to open my own law firm to do that kind of stuff. And just very very part-time, just because I wanted to keep my hands in the law. And I just realized how much I love law, which is why I got into it more full-time than before. So my firm doesn't do that, and I don't do that because I'm affiliated with a personal injury firm. But there are people that call me up because they see me on the internet that I'm a dentist attorney with those kind of issues. And I usually refer them to attorneys that do contract law, business law, employment law. It falls under that realm.
You had a Cherry Creek Dentist, Colorado in the news on Dental Town, right? Did you hear about that one? There was a high-profile Cherry Creek dentist can no longer practice in Colorado after the state board suspended his license. Do those big ones? Do those big name cases?
I do. Yeah, we sometimes. So and this is a good time to make a distinction between the board and the civil case. And I'm sure many of your viewers understand this, but so the dental boards are given authority by the state legislature of their respective states to regulate dentists. So if you want to practice dentistry in your state, the board regulates you. If you do something that violates the board rules as a dentist, the board can go after your license or put certain conditions on your license, maybe require you to take a certain class, maybe put you on probation. And then the legal system, the civil legal system, where you go after where your patients might sue you, essentially, under the legal system, that's a whole different tribunal. It's a whole different process. But many times we have patients that call us up after either after their doctor, their dentist, was in the news for something, and they say, I was one of these patients, and something like this happened to me. Or many times a patient will call us up and say, I already submitted a board complaint and the board is investigating it, but I'd also like to pursue a civil action against the dentist also. So we do overlap sometimes, and we definitely keep apprised of what's going on with the board. It is public information as well. You could go onto your board's website and type in someone's name and see what's going on, if they're in proceedings or the result of some proceedings as well.
Well, the point I want to make about that case is a lot of what the press is covering isn't really what he did really, really bad. Like, I'll give you 2 examples. Like, he left town for what may be very good reasons, and everybody on Dental Town thinks that was all good, but he didn't. He left their patients without. He abandoned patients.
I did.
And when the Lehman's Day contraction in 2008. 80 dentists in Phoenix went bankrupt. And some of them were so depressed that they just left town and went and cried with their mom for 3 months. And they came back to a bigger nightmare than going bankrupt and all that kind of stuff, because now the board was going their license. But I'll tell you, the cat's meow that I saw is there was a case where the hygienist went and numbed up the pedo kid, and they were doing 4 quadrants. So she went in and gave 4 carpules. The kid already had too much still. Well, then the dentist came in, and he didn't know the hygienist had numbed her up. So then he numbed it up, and then the patient died, okay? That is a nightmare. But you know what the real nightmare was? When he found out what happened, he altered the chart. He started erasing the chart. So it went from a civil, you're stupid. Now the government's in there saying, no, this isn't a civil case. You are a criminal lying deal. And so yeah, stuff has problems. I mean, my God, you have problems, you go bankrupt, whatever happens, you can't abandon patients in the middle of treatment. Right. And no matter what happens, I still love your quote, but I didn't get it down all right. The worst possible truth is better than the smallest lie, or what did you say?
The smallest lie.
Yeah. And you know what? You don't lie. You just, and I'll give you a third example with the DEA. Sometimes they'll come into a dentist's office because they know he's ordering and eating Vicodin like Cheerios, and when they walk in there, if you just raise your hand and say, "Oh my God, I'm addicted, I can't get off," and I'm so sorry. My God, they take you to the Betty Ford Center. Everybody's your friend. You're just gonna pee in a cup for 5 years, and it's all great, and you're gonna get treatment for your disease. But once you tell the DEA, "Oh no, I'm smarter than you, homie. I ain't ever done this. You're wrong. I'm gonna go higher." Now you're gonna be in a cage.
Right.
So it's so simple. It's just so simple to do the right thing. So what? So you're not gonna. So you don't do business law.
Not right now. No.
Yeah. And so then, what other advice would you give for these kids?
So number one is, if you ever are even question your treatment with a patient, or if a patient's already starting to threaten to sue you or implying that something's going wrong, never hesitate to call your insurance carrier. And the reason why is your insurance carrier might help you with some form letters or something to interact with your patients, but they also might already just put you in touch with their attorney in your state that might represent you, and you might start getting legal advice. It may be free, it may not be free, just depends on your insurance plan. But when in doubt, contact your insurance or contact your own attorney. Never try to, if you're concerned, never go through it alone. Definitely get some kind of advice from an advisor. I would also, it's also imperative you have insurance at all times, even though it is required under the State Dental Practice Act in Colorado and probably most states that you have insurance as a requirement for being a licensed dentist. Many dentists don't have insurance. They don't think it is
Don't have what type of insurance? Dental malpractice?
Dental malpractice insurance.
Are you serious? What?
I've heard of several cases that where someone, whether it's our firm or another firm, has pursued a doctor, whether it's a DDS or an MD or some other healthcare professional, and they find out that they don't have insurance. So then your personal assets are at stake, and it could be your future, your family's future. So no matter how much your insurance costs, it is always, not only are you violating your state's Dental Practice Act if you don't have it, but for your own sake and for your family's sake, get insurance.
So are all the states, do all states require that you have to have dental malpractice?
Well, I know Colorado does, and I'm pretty sure it's a routine requirement for states, because it protects not just the doctors, but the patients in case they do get injured and they need compensation for it.
Yeah. So I know this might not be your core subject expertise, but it's on everybody's mind, the Smiles Direct Club lawsuit, where the old school orthodontists say, hey, we want $6,500 and we want to be involved with this. and technology innovators are saying $6,500. We can do this for $2,500 through teledentistry. And then, of course, the lawyers. So what's your take on this? I mean, if it was with an iPhone, and someone said every iPhone is $6,500. And Becky Bye comes along and says, well, I'm going to make another one with less bells and features for $2,500. Everyone would love it. But how do you see this fight?
So I listened to your podcast about Smile Direct Club a couple months ago. My take on it is it's different. An iPhone is different than your mouth and your health and your well-being. And I've never used personally Smile Direct Club myself, but we get calls about Smile Direct Club occasionally saying, people call us and say, I used Smile Direct Club and now my bite is off and I'm going to have to go through years of orthodontia to fix what they did. Or I use Smile Direct Club, but now they won't even be able to fix my bite because my roots are too short to get more orthodontia. And so it is causing permanent disfigurement for a lot of people and permanent injuries. And perhaps it could have been prevented if a real live orthodontist or dentist was walking through with them through their orthodontic procedure, or maybe someone should have told them they weren't a candidate to begin with. So I will say I don't know enough about Smile Direct Club to make a total conclusion, but my initial thought is that healthcare should never be compromised, even if it's a lot less expensive.
I thought the most profound book I ever wrote was the 1984 Paul Starr's The Rise of the American Healthcare System, which got a Pulitzer Prize or whatever. And but it's 17% of the economy. Every president out there has said, the healthcare it's just so huge, and they launched that, and their Invisalign correctly launched it to the orthodontist first, and then slowly let people like me look at it. I remember they did this with implants when I remember when they oh my gosh, what's the guy that invented the implant? When he came over to the United States, he only would teach it to oral surgeons. You couldn't even go to the class if it was a periodontist. And I felt that discrimination. I remember in California, Dr. Gary Carr, he'd only let endodontists go into the course. So I snuck in with Datola, and we didn't get caught till like 3 o'clock, and then he kicked us out. And I just thought, it's so weird. But his first move was to sue the ortho societies. And I'm like, dude, I just like, wow. I mean, so what do you think? Do you think they'll shut them completely down, or will they just, what will be the future of Smiles Direct?
I don't know. I know there are some lawsuits, whether it's shareholder lawsuits or the class action that you had an attorney on your program talking about two class actions, one of orthodontists against Smile Direct Club, one of patients of Smile Direct Club. And I don't know what the outcome is going to be. The reason why is healthcare is changing, not just dentistry, but all of healthcare. And it's moving to a more high volume, more hands-off approach. And I think that one of the big arguments that's a big selling point is it's more access to care and more economical access to care. So I think there's a whole philosophy mindset that's changing about what healthcare should be. And maybe Smile Direct Club is the future of healthcare. Maybe it's going to be more regulated than it is. Maybe it's such a disruptor that local state boards don't even know how to regulate it. So I don't know if it's going to go out of business, but maybe there will be a different relationship with Smile Direct Club and dentists and patients and the boards in the future. That's my prediction.
So did you see the hoverboard dentist in court? Did you see the hoverboard case, the hoverboard dentist?
Yeah.
I didn't think that the key was the hoverboard, but I'm trying to transfer knowledge from the old guys like me who have 5 grandkids to the new kids coming out that never had their first kid. And in that transfer, I've always been against Medicaid. And I don't know if this is like in your court and your expertise or is business law, but the reason I don't like Medicaid is because staff make mistakes. Humans make mistakes. Yep. And when your lovely receptionist, who might even be your spouse, makes a bunch of Medicare, Medicaid mistakes, and then you find out about it 10 years later, you're going to go sit in a cage. And I know a guy who had to go spend the rest of his life in Mexico, who just died after Christmas. But he retired in Mexico because he would have sat in a cage because his amazing, beautiful wife, Barbara, was not the best biller. And I just tell people that, if I do business with you and it goes wrong, you're going to sue me for money. But you do something wrong with the government, they kidnap you and put you in a cage or kill you. And if you say, hey, do you want to do business with the mob? I mean, if it goes bad, they might shoot you. And they go, no, I would never do that. But I'll do business with the United States government. Dude, that's like the biggest criminal mobster in town. And this guy, he's on the hoverboard, so the media's making news out of it. But it's Medicaid fraud. And dude, when you do Medicaid fraud, or it's alleged, when you do Medicaid fraud, I mean, what is their conviction rate? Like 93%, 94%? I mean, I wouldn't do business with the mob. So why are you doing business with the government?
Yeah, I mean, once you start accepting Medicaid, Medicare, you are subject to really stringent requirements. And if you violate any of those, it can have some serious consequences for you, not just financially, but obviously with your liberty.
And so they're so young and dumb. Will you review it for the mob too? Why should you not do business with the mob in Denver?
What do you mean with Medicaid?
No, with the mafia. I mean, do you? I mean, would you recommend that they do a dental contract with the local mafia organization in Denver?
No comment.
I mean, I just don't get it. I mean, you tell these young kids, they look and they say, well, I want to be a Medicaid provider because I want to help the poor. Okay, you have a big heart, right? But you're gonna get in bed with a guy who kidnaps and kills for a living, and it's just I just can't do it. If they wanted to make healthcare, I mean, if they want to do Medicaid reform, the first thing I would do is say, well, we're trying to save people's teeth while you're still practicing kidnapping and putting people in a cage. Okay, so if you want healthcare reform, the first thing you do is that when I find out my Shirley has made 14,000 billing errors, that it's a financial deal. I mean, sue me, get the money back. But the first thing they do is they put him in a cage. And look at the only quote from the guy from the government: if convicted, he'll face 10 years in prison. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like, so Medicaid's dead to me. So do you, again, I'm sorry I don't understand, but like, do you do, if someone had a Medicare case like that, who do you refer them to? Do you do that too, or just only clinical malpractice?
So right now, no, but it's something that I'm definitely looking into if we were going to expand the scope of the type of things we do, because you can, if you know of fraud against the government, there's something under, it's called a key tam action, where you can file a case as a plaintiff on behalf of the government for damages to the government from some type of fraud. And then you get a percentage of whatever amount that you as the plaintiff get a percentage of whatever amount you recovered for the government. And the Medicaid thing, I'm glad you brought that up. There was a case a couple of years ago now where there was a dentist, I believe in the state of Indiana, was working for one of the DSOs that accepted Medicaid. And he was noticing that there was Medicaid fraud going on. They were charging Medicaid for procedures that never happened, or they were overdiagnosing just to use up the Medicaid benefits. And he filed one of these actions on behalf of the government. and prevailed. And the settlement was pretty substantial, I believe, well over $1 million, maybe a couple $1 million. And of course, the government got most of it, but he was able to he and his attorneys got a percentage of what he recovered for the Medicaid fraud.
So it cost him $2 million?
I believe so. Some amount. I don't know offhand. I just remember reading about the case.
Wow, that's so much money. My divorce was $3.8 million. I know what half a divorce costs, so that I share the pain. Here's this. This is another thing that always comes up on Dental Town. If you go to the Dental Town, we got 50 categories: root canals, fillings, crowns. One's laws and ethics. And they always don't know what to do about a patient refund. Some people say, well, you give a patient refund, they better sign something and release you. And then other people say, no, dude, you just signed a receipt admitting to what you did wrong. What do you say? I mean, I give them their money back, but what's your thoughts on a patient refund?
So again, I think that's something that if they're concerned, they should definitely talk to an attorney about. But just in general circumstances, most patients that call us, and I usually tell them, if your case is maybe not economically viable, you'd probably lose more money even if you prevail by the expensive litigation. Have you talked to this dentist about getting a refund? Would you be satisfied with the refund if they gave you a refund? Because by a refund, you might be able to get more money than you would have you gone through the litigation route after attorney fees and court fees. And oftentimes they call me back and say, thank you for recommending that. I got a full refund and I'm so happy. And they move on with their life and the dentist moves on with their life. So I think more dentists, more doctors should evaluate and see if a refund, even if it's a significant refund, maybe it's worth it to reduce the likelihood of them pursuing a case against them and maybe prevailing, or just the headache of dealing with a case for 1 to 2 years. So I think it's a great thing. In general, I don't believe just issuing them a refund would be able to avoid having them maybe report something to the dental board, because again, that's a whole other process in the civil litigation process. But most times patients are just so happy they got a big chunk of money back and they just move on with their lives.
Well, the one thing I've noticed, and I had one of my mentors and role models got sued, and it went to trial, and the whole thing was a couple of years long.
Yeah.
It ruined like 2 years of his life. He never smiled. He wasn't happy, and he wouldn't go out drinking. I mean, when you're Irish and you're not drinking, you should tell the doctor. And it's like, God, for 2 years of that.
Yeah.
I mean, why?
Just refund the money, and just, if you know that, even if you're convinced that you did nothing wrong, sometimes it's just so much better than to lose sleep at night.
Yeah. So, are you seeing? I'm hearing that the opioid is causing lawsuits now, and I'm starting to hear of people wanting you to pay for me to go to the Betty Ford Center or something like that. What are you seeing with opioids? And I know that you're in Colorado, so you're probably stoned right now and don't even care. But what do you think of the marijuana being legal? And when are they going to start advertising? When are dentists going to? I'm still waiting for dentists to say, hey, are you afraid of the dentist? Come to Colorado Smile Dentistry and eat this little buttercup with THC, and you're going to have a happy time. Is that around the corner?
Yeah, I think you just gave people some ideas probably for new dental clinics, but the opioid crisis has hit Colorado as it has nationwide. We do get some calls about wrongful deaths related to opioids, usually not against DDSs, but more against MDs who see people for chronic pain long term. There are multiple, as you probably know, class action lawsuits against the pharmaceutical companies themselves for it. What I have been seeing, which is kind of interesting, is people calling us up and saying, I was in so much pain and they didn't give me opioids. They didn't give me opioids even though I deserved to have them because I was in so much pain, and they said it's because of the opioid crisis. And I would say, number one, do not let that deter you from choosing not to give opioids, because, again, my legal opinion is that's not negligence. Negligence is injuring someone permanently or temporarily because you breached the standard of care. Withholding opioids from someone does not hurt them because it doesn't treat the problem. It just treats the pain, and there's other ways to deal with pain management. But we get a lot of people just angry at their dental provider or their healthcare provider for not giving them opioids right now, which is kind of an interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, and that's the way it was when I got out of school. The bad guy was the doctor for poor grandma's got pain, and you won't give her a drug because she's going to get addicted when she's going to die. So then the pendulum swung the other way, and then they were giving it all out, and now the pendulum's going back the other way, and it doesn't make any sense because, I mean, I don't see people dying of opioids. I see people dying of addiction. Like Whitney Houston, when she died, it wasn't one thing. Hell, her bloodstream had all kinds of things in it. It had cocaine, marijuana, prescription drugs, all that. So the people that are overdosing on opioids, well, they're not doing a toxicology report and just finding opioids. They're finding half the kitchen sink in their bloodstream because addiction was the problem, not any specific brand. But I see other problems though in these states that are legalizing marijuana, like your state. From dental school faculty, they say we don't know what to do because Dr. Good, who has been at the dental school 20 years, uses medical marijuana for chronic pain, whatever, and he totally believes it, and he loves how it works. But before school, at lunch, and after school, he goes outside and smokes a joint. And I've talked to deans, and I said, well, what do you think? And they go, well, I don't want to sue him because what if he's right? I don't want to write his paycheck. So they're just like, so my thought is, when isn't the Supreme Court supposed to weigh in eventually when the states are going two different ways? Don't they usually weigh in on it?
I'm sure that there will be some kind of federal legislation which will help maybe normalize things among states. But I think the case that you're talking about, if there's a provider that might be under the influence of marijuana, I think it just goes into, are they impaired? Is it the same as having one or two glasses of wine before working on a patient? Is that impairment to the point where not only is it negligent from my perspective, but from the board's perspective, are they violating some type of dental board regulation? And I think it's quite possible. But I also think marijuana probably has a different effect on every single person, just like half a glass of wine might have a different effect on different people. I don't think, personally, if I was going to practice law or dentistry, I would never put anything in my body that might impair my judgment or my performance on working on a patient. And that kind of opens a can of worms is waking up and taking, something for a heart condition, will that impair me, my professional judgment or something? So, I think it comes down to impairment.
Yeah, that's a good answer. And it's crazy time. Back to the government, HIPAA, it's the same thing. It's like, my God, HIPAA, OSHA, Medicare. So do you do HIPAA cases, or do you see HIPAA cases, or what's your thought on HIPAA?
So HIPAA, I don't do HIPAA cases directly, but HIPAA is a big part of my practice in many ways. Number one, if a doctor committed a HIPAA violation, it kind of just adds into the whole set of facts that we do to show that they were negligent in some way. If they violated HIPAA, their state dental board might get involved, or the federal government might get involved because HIPAA is a federal law. Also, as an attorney, as a representative for clients / patients, we have to go through the HIPAA process to certain to send certain documents that comply with HIPAA to get their medical records from their dentist, any other medical or dental providers. So I have to be aware of HIPAA and know what HIPAA is. If there was a really bad violation, oftentimes we will recommend to the client to go through a certain route through the federal government to report HIPAA violations.
And explain to the young kids in dental school what they may not even know what HIPAA is. Explain to them what that is.
But basically, it requires that you cannot divulge any personally identifying information for your patients in any way. And there's a certain process and methodology for safeguarding patient information. And it's very, very serious. If you breach HIPAA, depending on the severity and the extent to which you breach it or how many times you've breached HIPAA for a specific patient or a set of patients, you can be fined a significant amount of money.
And what is worse, hepatitis or hepatitis?
Depends, but you do not want to breach HIPAA. You do not want to commit a HIPAA violation. Make sure you listen in all your classes in dental school that talk about HIPAA, and make sure as a practicing doctor that you take CEs on HIPAA as well, because HIPAA is also, like many federal laws, it's evolving, it changes, or maybe there's new methods and ways to comply with it that come up. So definitely keep up with the legal requirements on that.
So again, you're a dentist and a lawyer, so there's so many questions I want to ask you. So if it's not your core deal, sorry about that. But the other thing that makes dentists just go insane is online reviews. And sometimes you're reading it, it's like you're fighting with Karen on the internet. Are you drinking? And I believe drinking has something to do with it, because like on all these social communities, like Dental Town, it's a different behavior between 10:30 at night and 1 o'clock in the morning, as measured by typos and telling you to go jump off a cliff, whatever. So we were all on Dental Town. They were posting this dentist arguing with somebody, and we're just like, okay. Because I'm Irish, so I just assumed he was drunk. I'm like, nobody in their right mind would argue online. But anyway, so why does this bother dentists so much? Why do they go ballistic? Because when I got out of school, when you went in there and you told the dentist, you said, I have 5,000 charts, and then you'd pay a consultant $30,000. It'd take him 2 weeks to say, yeah, but 3,000 of them have never come back. And he just like scratched his head. It was like 3,000 patients never came back. He didn't blink. But now he sees one lady online saying doctor, and he just loses it.
Right. Well, no, it's the same for attorneys. We get online reviews, and in many ways we are not subject to HIPAA ourselves, but we have an attorney-client privilege, which is considered this very sacred privacy between an attorney and a client. And if you breach it, you can there's really grave consequences between also getting sued and with our own regulatory body, which is the Colorado Supreme Court for us. So we're also sensitive to online reviews. And I think doctors and attorneys and other professionals that have the same kind of confidential information, it's hard because you can't go out there and tell your side of the story because you're violating HIPAA, you're violating privilege. And so I think that's what's frustrating about it. I think unlike a restaurant, I see restaurant reviews where there's bad reviews, and then maybe a manager, whether they're stepping out of bounds or not, will say, we remember you. You're just upset because we were really busy and you didn't have a reservation and we didn't have a 5-person table, but we try to accommodate you by giving you free drinks or something to that extent. And being a professional where you're subject to that kind of privacy, you can't defend yourself for online reviews. So I think that's what's really frustrating about that.
Yeah, but what I don't understand is if you go up to anyone anywhere, I mean, I've lectured 50 countries. If you're having dinner with any dentist in any country and say, just approximately what % of all the people in your country are nuts? And the lowest you're going to hear is 20%. And usually it's about, they say like a quarter. So it's usually 20 to 25%. So somebody leaves you an online crazy review.
Right.
Well, I'm sorry. Are you new to Earth? Is this the first time you found out that people were crazy? I mean, I had an online review, and the guy mentioned like 9 times in the review that he was a warehouse manager. It's like, I mean, he started every point, and it's like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
So I just think they should lighten up. Are they more? Do you think dentists, physicians, lawyers are just their ego is so wrapped up into that I'm a doctor and you're not, that to have someone review them in poor light is just something they just never saw coming, or what?
I think it's more from the perspective of, I think lawyers and doctors, they work really hard, and they have very stressful jobs, and they put a lot of time and money and effort into becoming those professionals to begin with. So if someone is criticizing you for the whole world to see about what you did for them when you know you did your best, I think that really kind of gets to your heart. And I mean, I can see it bothering me too.
You know what the best joke about Hipaa is?
What?
I can't tell you. I'd break compliance. My gosh, I can't believe this hour went so fast. So the biggest thing, a lot of people say, well, half the dentists don't do this. And I always say, God, that's an amazing stat. I'd love to see the stat, but they never have a stat. They never have a survey. Dental Town, when you start a thread, you can start a poll. So I've been seeing my polls on this thing forever, but when you line up dentists and you say, what stresses you out the most? Well, it's always a human. It's either a human that's a patient or a human that's an employee. We've been talking about all the lawsuits, humans that are patients, and we talked a whole hour, but any advice on lawsuits with the human employees? Because all the dentists will tell you, no, it's not finding the MB2 that stresses me out. It's my hygienist. It's that lady's online review. It's people's what stresses them out.
Right. I think that's what stresses everybody out in all fields. But again, of course, since I'm an attorney, I'm a little biased and think anytime you think you might have a serious problem with another employee, it's always good to consult with an employment attorney or somebody. But in terms of working with people, something that I learned as a lawyer and even in dental school as a dentist, taking different personality tests, it's really important to identify the personality types of people, even if you don't make them take a test in front of you. And frankly, I'm not an employment lawyer, but that doesn't sound very legal, or there might be legal issues with that. But understanding what makes people tick versus what makes people happy and happy to work with you, and taking classes on leadership styles and personalities, and finding a way to work with different people based on their personalities. And it is a lifelong process to do that. And you're not just born with it, you have to work at it. And it's something that you, as a doctor, as the leader of this team, you need to invest time and money into learning how to deal with personalities. And if you take that education, apply it, it should be easier to work with people and help them work with you.
That was very well said and very profound, because it's the, my gosh, it's in life, it's not your doctorate or two. It's not what you know, it's what you know with who you know. And, like you said, don't lie. The worst truth is better than the small lie. Don't give toxic people money. I mean, there's so many dentists I know, and they're like, well, she's been here for this many years. And when I bought the practice, she was here. Dude, you hate her. You hate her. You absolutely hate her, and you give her money every 2 weeks. Right. This is never going to end well. Same thing with patients. I had to fire my best friend because we have a deal. We don't do talk to deals, and he comes in here. He's the nicest guy with me and he's just unbelievable. But once he starts doing his dental insurance, the profanity starts flying, and he's crazy. And we have a protocol, and they said it in the morning one day. They go, yeah, but if he wasn't Doc's friend, we'd release him. I go, I didn't break protocol. You did. If that's the protocol, call his butt up and fire him. But don't work with toxic people. Don't do things that you don't like to do for money. It's just a bad idea. But you confused me on the Smiles Direct Club, or what confused me about the Smiles Direct Club is that here's a case where the orthodontists say, no, we're not going to save money, low cost. Right. We're not going to do that. And then the same people say, oh, but here's a dental therapist. And if you don't want low-cost technology, then how could you accept low-cost labor?
Right.
I mean, if you're not into low cost, then be consistent. No Smiles Direct Club, no dental therapist. Right. You just can't pick and choose where you're going to have high cost and low cost, or can you? Where is that going to end in Colorado?
I think there is a movement to get mid-level providers into Colorado. I know that in the last year or two, they are allowing dental hygienists to apply silver
fillings.
The silver fillings. And again, I think it goes into that argument, not just lower cost dentistry, but also, access to care. I think even though Smile Direct Club is less, I think a lot of people who use Smile Direct Club are more concerned about cosmetic care than actual necessity. But there is a movement for the mid-level providers and other providers to provide more care, expand their role, overlap with dentistry in many ways for access to care. And I think there are benefits and risks to that, to the general public, as well as to dentistry.
So it's kind of funny, when I got out of school in 87, and please don't tell me you weren't bored in 1987. If you weren't, just keep it a secret. But you were always afraid of not diagnosing periodontal disease. That was the scary thing. And now that probably doesn't even make the top 3. You're saying nerve paresthesia, lingual nerve, implants.
Implants. Another one that we get that is a case, and again, it involves the nerve, is overfilling when you're doing a root canal of calcium hydroxide. And it's often on roots that happen to be close to the IA canal. And the calcium hydroxide seeps in onto the nerve and then also causes really permanent, devastating nerve injuries as well. So we have a couple of those cases that we've either done or are on our radar as well. So those are the big ones because they're nerve injuries. And so it has huge consequences for the patient long term. So
what you're saying is just know where the risks are. I mean, when you're driving down a crazy highway. By the way, you live in Denver, Colorado, right? Yeah, yes. that drive when to Breckenridge. I mean, there's a lot of steep turns and a lot of crazy stuff, and you slow down. And obviously, be aware of that. But I would be a nice guy. And I would not upset the patients, and just treat other people like you want to be treated, and avoid the hazards. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that I didn't bring up?
I would also say disclose the risks to the patient and really emphasize what the risks are. I know that many practices, they just sign a sheet and that's it. But if you have the time, it's really worth talking through the risks of a procedure with the patient. So you're setting their expectations to begin with. If something happens, if there's an outcome, even if it's something as small as a crown, and one of the risks is maybe their bite's a little off, or they might have to come back for adjustments or to get it redone. Let them know that in advance. So if they come back, they already know that, okay, this happens, and my dentist already warned me about this, and it's consistent with what he or she told me. Anything else? I think it's important. When I was in dental school, and obviously because of my legal background, but it's very important to be involved in what's going on with your state or the federal legislature, see how laws can affect you, even if they're not a dental law, directly a dental law. It might be a law that applies to all of healthcare that might affect you as a dentist. And I would definitely recommend being involved in your local organized dentistry chapter. And because they do pretty good, they have lobbyists and they have people who stay apprised of these laws, and they can give you a lot of good education about how it might affect you. So I think it's important, even if you have no interest in the law whatsoever, it does affect you. And I think it's important to be involved as a citizen and as a professional and understand what's going on.
Yeah, and I just want to say another thing about the ADA. And I have always been a member, even as a student. And a lot of people always tell me what they don't like about the ADA. And I'm like, well, would you like to hear what your ex-wife doesn't like about you? And how many things have you told me you didn't like about your own mom and dad? But let me tell you something about the United States. It's 1 million attorneys charging $1 trillion in a $19 trillion economy, mediating between the business class and the people and the U.S. government. And they write all the laws. And when I was little and I told my dad that I didn't like the lawyers and I thought it was crazy, he said, "Are you kidding me?" He said, when I was your age, they were shooting each other. And I'd rather have them suing each other than shooting each other, because it's tough for these people, families, tribes to all get along. And my God, if you're, whatever tribe you're in, the dental tribe, if you don't have your lawyers sitting down at the desk, you know the insurance companies does, you know
Right.
Hipaa does, OSHA does, you know everybody who wants a piece of your hide does. And then you
Right.
say, well, I don't want to be a member. Well, you know what it really means? It means that 3 out of 4 dentists got to pay the bill because you're a tightwad cheapskate. And I don't want to hear it. Don't tell me you're not a member and to my face, because I'm paying for the ride. It doesn't mean I like it. But it was that Danny DeVito movie. Remember when the Danny DeVito movie is I forgot the name of the movie, and he was talking about something. He goes, talking about a lawsuit. He goes, they got their nuclear bomb missiles and I got mine, in The Color Money. Do you remember that in The Color Money? But anyway, it's just a part of doing business. And that's my number one complaint with the Arizona State Dental Association. I was always telling Kevin, I know all this stuff you're doing. But I was out with these 4 guys last week. None of them knew any of that. They got to market these state-by-state battles, because otherwise it's just crazy. And by the way, and my last advice, when you start doing things with Medicaid or Medicaid, remember that there was that dentist in where was he at? In Ohio, where he hired former OJ attorney Alan Dershowitz. Hired to represent the former Metro Health dentist convicted. I mean, I mean, when you got to get OJ's attorney, maybe you should stop doing Medicaid and Medicare. But anyway, it was an honor to podcast you. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, and it was just an honor to podcast you.
Well, thank you. I've been a member of Dental Town for many years, even since before I went to dental school, and it's an honor to be on your show. So thank you.